I'm Dinalva Roldan, and I will present my PhD research. It was developed in the University of São Paulo in Brazil, advised by Maria Cristina Leme, entitled The Neighborhood Unit and its Latin American Connections, the construction of the concept and its appropriation in the work of José Luis Serge, Carlos Raul Villanueva, and Afonso Eduardo Ride from 1945 to 1958. The research aims to reflect on the concept of neighborhood unit, mobilizing in a series of projects in Latin America after the Second World War. The neighborhood unit was consolidated by the North American sociologist Clarence Perry. He did it in relation to the notion of community envisioned by the Sociological School of Chicago. This research investigates how this concept was consolidated in an urban plan, how it was circulated and was appropriated in Latin America through the discourses and practices of architects and urbanists. Our focus is the reception of the concept in urban plans conceived by José Luis Serge in Colombia, Carlos Raul Villanueva in Venezuela, and Afonso Eduardo Ride and Carmen Portinho in Brazil from 1945 to 1958. We can find a series of projects that were mobilizing the concept of neighborhood unit in different countries of Latin America at the same time. So we can inquire about the similarities and differences of these experiences by investigating the means of circulation and the appropriations of the concept in different contexts. To the perspective of connected histories, we could observe the negotiations operated by cultural exchanges. This procedure avoids interpretations where ideas or concepts could simply be applied in different contexts, as if it were a model to be followed. Instead, it highlights negotiation and appropriation as a cultural practices that can create new meanings. We started by investigating the construction of the idea of neighborhood unit and how it circulated among architects and urban planners. The sociologist Clarence Perry consolidated the concept in a survey to the Regional Plan of New York and its environs in 1929. At that moment, the rapid urban growth of North American cities was stimulated by new means of communication and transportation, such as trains and cars, that reshaped the cities. The Sociological School of Chicago examined the social transformation that took place in those cities as a disruption of traditional communities and their bounds. It was in that context that Clarence Perry proposed the neighborhood unit as an arrangement for community life, drawing a scheme for residential areas where the school and playgrounds could work as a center for sociability. By doing so, he defined the smallest scale for social organization in a big city, a unit that could be placed in between the arterial streets and articulated in a regional plan. The Regional Plan of New York, published in 1929, was immediately disseminated through the press and through the volumes of the plan to a specialized audience in the United States and abroad. The diffusion of the plan also took place through the circulation of urban planners between the United States and England, as Thomas Adams, the British urban planner, who coordinated the regional plan. During the Second World War, we can see the use of the neighborhood unit in the County of London Plan, coordinated by Patrick Abercrombie in 1943. In this plan, we notice how the concept was articulating the residential areas and their public services in an urban plan. It also served as a scale of intervention for the reconstruction of destroyed areas. After the war, the County of London Plan was widely discussed and circulated in Europe as a reconstruction plan, spreading out the neighborhood unit concept. Specialized magazines were also an important means of circulation and dissemination of the concept. When we look at the French magazine L'Architecture d'aujourd'hui, which had an international circulation, we observe the debate on the reconstruction of cities in which the idea of neighborhood unit was central. The magazine from 1945 to 1958 published a bunch of projects of neighborhood unit associated with the housing theme. We could notice that the intention of social organization was weakened in the formalization of housing complexes associated with collective equipment. It was in the post-war period that a series of projects of neighborhood unit were developed in different countries of Latin America. Some of these experiments were carried out by José Luis Serge in Colombia, Carlos Raul Villanueva in Venezuela, Afonso Eduardo Ride and Carmen Portinho in Brazil from 1945 to 1958. José Luis Serge, with Paul Lester Winner, created the Town Planning Associates that developed urban plans in Brazil, Colombia, Peru, Venezuela, and Cuba. In all of them, they planned urban areas and designed neighborhood units associating dwellings and collective equipments. It is important to realize in those projects the negotiation with the new context by using local materials, low-rise dwellings, creating a solution for specific topography and climatic conditions, and withdrawing the block in relation to the colonial tradition with compact urban tissue and patios. In Venezuela, the architect Carlos Raul Villanueva built his professional career within public services responsible for housing and urban policies. He worked at the Taller de Arquitectura del Banco Obrero, where he developed many projects for new neighborhoods guided by the principle of neighborhood unit. Among them can be highlighted El Silencio, El Paraíso, and 23 de Enero, located in Caracas. In all these projects, the dwellings and the collective facilities were provided, but the differences in their urban design are remarkable. In El Silencio, the housing conformed the block and was designed inside of colonial block inserted into existing urban tissue. In the housing complexes El Paraíso and 23 de Enero, he designed high-rise dwellings, and in the last case, a vast housing complex was built, breaking up the traditional block and the continuity of the urban tissue. In Brazil, the architect Afonso Eduardo Ride and the urbanist Carmen Portinho worked together in the public service of the Federal District in Rio de Janeiro. Both were active in the housing and urban policies of the capital. In 1946, Portinho became chief of the Department of Social Housing, where she carried out the construction of 3 housing complexes, Pedregulho, Gávea, and Paquetá. The projects of Pedregulho and Gávea, designed by Ride, were widely diffused by the historiography as a residential unit and as an example of modern social housing in Brazil. Recent research has shown how these projects were part of a larger plan to create a neighborhood unit in each district of the city, dealing with the issue of affordable housing and the collective equipment needed in a context of rapid urban growth and the debates about the favelas. When we look to the 3 cases, we notice how the same concept was spread out through many countries by different architects at the same time. The debate on urbanism and housing in Latin America was impacted by the context of the cyclical crisis of 1929, The crisis stimulated industrialization in the region to replace imported products. As a result, boosted the urbanization. In this context, a change of economic models was at stake, from the agricultural export model to urban industrial, followed by political debate between conservatives and liberals. So, in a moment of growth of the capital cities and increased demand for housing, the field of urbanism was changing. The public institutions of planning and housing were being modernized or created. It was in those institutions that Villanueva, Rigi, and Portinho developed their careers and carried out projects where the neighborhood unit was an instrument that articulated different scales of urban planning and housing construction. In a different way, Serge and Wiener were hired as international experts, but worked with those local institutions in plans of urban modernization. The neighborhood unit in Latin America was associated with a perspective of economic and social modernization. Most part of the time also associated with the modern architecture, although other principles of urbanism was operating simultaneously, revealing the negotiation operated in this social context. Thank you for the audience.